1986 to 2003 was the extent of the existence of Fugazi. Were an American band who released 6 albums. They were known for their unusual and experimental approach to the music, but also for their DIY business ethics, with deliberate attempts to keep costs and therefore ticket prices for their live shows low, charging just enough to make a profit, for example, doing away with merchandise, discouraging moshing to keep security costs down. They also have a huge catalogue of live concert recordings available. Hi, my name's Dan. So this was the 4th studio album by Fugazi, and it's my first time listening to it. I have come across them before, but they've not really made much of an impression on me. I think I've got 1 or 2 Fugazi tracks on compilation CDs. You used to get magazines with compilations on the front, things like Q magazine and Uncut magazine and stuff like that. And somewhere in my vaults, I've got a load of uh, these CDs. Right, so I'm going to describe this as being noise punk, but with lots of other stuff in there as well. Post-hardcore is the term that both Acclaimed Music and Wikipedia have used. I'm less confident about using that and knowing what that means, so I'm going to stick with noise punk. But there's no no description, no genre description that would encompass everything that's on this album because it's quite varied in interesting ways. There's lots of bits of discordance. There's lots of noise, especially used through the guitars. There's use of feedback and overdrive and things that sound very kind of as if they're topping out the studio sound. So distortion there. There's mechanical noises, metallic clangs. At times it can be quite angular and jangly. There's lots of use of having the 2 guitars. They've got in interesting ways and unusual relationships between them. It's got kind of a punk feel to it, which is why I'm using that word. It's got the kind of energy and immediacy to it, and some of the stuff that I read suggested that they kind of have taken hardcore punk and then changed it, and I kind of feel like that's quite a good description. It's in the main, not all the tracks are like that. And this is kind of more emphasized by the fact that most of the singing is shout singing in a kind of a punky kind of way. And also sometimes it's quite fast and it's got that going. As I've said before, there's quite a bit of discordance, but it's done with a lot of skill. And there's some deliberately discordant singing, which kind of sometimes you'd think, I might really hate that. But actually, I'm listening to it and going, how on earth do you do that? How do you sing so that you're not actually doing that in, it's not in harmony with the other person that's singing or nor with everything else that's being played. Um, and having kind of described these oddities to it, some of the introduction sections to tracks are even odder and are kind of much more moving into the noise idea and get something that's almost a musical at times. So a couple of examples of that are Birthday Pony and Do You Like Me? There's one track that Wikipedia says is dub, which is the track version. There's one track labeled as psychedelic, which is by you. I can kind of hear dub being for version, but again, it doesn't feel like they've stepped out from what they're doing in the rest of the tracks. It just feels like um, it feels like it complements everything. Occasionally, it's got a kind of empty sound, which is the kind of the empty sound from grunge, which is basically bass and drums, with quite a crunchy, toppy bass going. Um, how did I feel about it? I liked it actually quite a bit, as it turned out. So there have been quite a few things. Obviously, I've gone through loads of albums now. I've got a lot more to go. Very nearly a third of the way through, and often kind of stuff that's noise, stuff that's discordance, and things like that have put me off. I wasn't by this. I was impressed by the feel of it. Somehow it was satisfying in its discordance. It was interesting and inventive, and it got some nice aesthetics to it and grooves. It's got this kind of feel of hardness and metal and stone and things like that, but in a good way. Some particularly good drum sounds at points, I felt. So I basically turned it up and wrapped myself in it and just enjoyed it. So definitely a good album from my point of view. And I'm still trying to work out why things that maybe you'd say stylistically are similar, I like some and I dislike others. I don't really know, but I'm getting there, and I think it's about aesthetics. But on this occasion, I think it's also about the beats and the grooves that they get going, which is not to say it's like funky or anything like that. Right, I've run out of steam. Obviously, I like this album. I'd love to know what you think of this album, so please do so by leaving me a comment. But that's it from me for now.
Forecasting rains and mud, so take my temperature. You say